Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all my other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. So today I'm delighted to welcome special guest Kellan Fluckiger, who's here today to talk about the nudge and many other things as well. He's an international best-selling author, a performing artist, a speaker and coach. Kellan provides frameworks and tools to melt barriers, move mountains, and mobilize superpowers to help you get what you want. And you can find Kellan on masteryourmonsters.com. So Kellan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You are not only welcome, but the first thing I want to do is acknowledge you deeply, because putting on a podcast is a labor of love. It takes a lot of work, dedication, commitment, and so forth to bring information, transformation, joy, and love to people. And I want to thank you for being willing to share that and do that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that very much. And it's my pleasure to do it. It's you have your own podcast as well, don't you? Your Ultimate Life podcast.
I do. This is our 7th year, and I just realized I recorded episode 1130 or something the other day, and so we're like neck deep in it and love it. So yes, we share that passion.
Fantastic. And it's such a trip, isn't it? It's such a great thing. I mean, I will just say something about that, which is sometimes we leap into a project, we think we're doing a podcast. What we're actually doing is entering a completely life-changing experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The excitement and sometimes work of finding good guests, of talking to people, of getting editing set up so that it's not such a chore, and marketing it and letting people find it and just responding to things. There's just a lot of work, but it's also so much fun. Like when I started this, we started at the beginning of COVID. And it was funny because we didn't have a podcast, and somebody that was in a mastermind with my wife and I called my wife, who's my business partner, and she's an angel, and maybe we'll get to that story later today. She literally walks on water. But anyway, called her and said, when the words lockdown first started appearing in the vocabulary, right? And said, well, does Kellan have a podcast? And we don't know, but we think he was like looking for something to listen to because he knew who I was, even though the mastermind had been a few years before, and we didn't. But she said, yes. And she came downstairs and said, we have a podcast. And I said, okay. And I thought, what can I do in this time, given this stuff, to matter? And so we started with 15 minutes daily and did that for a while. And then after 2 years or 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, we decided we had too many episodes, so we went to twice a week and lengthened them to 40 minutes. But that's how this started. It's kind of funny, and we've been on continuously now. This is our 7th year.
Amazing. Well, mine started in quite a similar way, in the sense that I was going insane and climbing the walls during lockdown. And I thought, I've just got to get my voice out to make some sort of contribution because I can't work. Well, I guess it'll have to be a podcast. That was the beginning, so similar. We had a sort of similar thing, didn't we? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're starting. Now what are we going to do? So good for you, sir. It takes a lot to keep it going. So, and thank you very much for that acknowledgement. That's before we've even done anything on the episode. What are you going to say to me before the end?
Who knows? We'll just kind of roll with it and see how it develops.
Exactly. So this thing, the nudge, you actually gave me this expression in the pre-call. What is the nudge?
Well, to start with, if we're honest with ourselves and we sit quietly, we realize that there's more to us than the body, the skin bag, the physical container. We realize that there is some other energetic component. Now, if you're religious, maybe you call it a spirit or soul, and I am, and so I call it that, but it doesn't really matter. We know there's something larger around us and that holds everything. We know that. We sense it intuitively. We also, if we pay attention, realize that the nourishment and care we give to the body is different than the nourishment and care we give to the spirit or the energy piece. because they don't eat the same things, right? Protein and protocols and all that stuff, that's body stuff. And that's important. Now, when the body gets hungry, we feel something, and really hungry, and stomach rumbles, it makes a noise, and people look at us weird. Okay. And so there's signals that there is something to do here. And that's for hunger. Maybe there's some muscles that need to be stretched or exercised or whatever. And the body has its way of talking to us. Nervous system, we feel a little dysregulated or out of sorts, maybe we go breathe or we do stuff to get sort of, the vagus nerve cool down, all that, whatever it is. Fine. The spirit has its own communication method. It doesn't grumble like a stomach. It doesn't ache like a muscle. But it has its own yearnings. And sometimes the things we feel aren't anxiety or some kind of, unresolved trauma or whatever. It's just a spirit who is hungry, who needs something. So that's a thing to think about. Now, the nudge itself is a sometimes mostly very subtle. Sometimes it gets really loud and noisy, but usually it's really subtle impression to do something or say something or go somewhere or be something or create something. Yesterday, I was on a show in the morning for about an hour, and there were 40 or 50 people on there, and it wasn't my show, and it wasn't the other guy's show either, but I knew most of the people on there. And I saw one fellow, and I got a nudge, a feeling that I should talk to him afterwards. So literally 2/3 of the way through the show, I got on the Signal chat, because that group uses Signal instead of WhatsApp, and sent him a message and said, yo, dude, I think we need to talk. And so we scheduled a call 2 or 3 hours later, and he said to me, how did you know? And I said, I don't know. I was just scanning. You know how Zoom is. There's 45, 25 or 35 or whatever faces. Your face was screaming at me. I don't know. And so I did. And so we had a conversation, and it was 20 minutes turned into 45, and it was important for his business and his life and this and that and the other. But that was the nudge, the impression to do something. And I don't know where it goes from here, but it was to serve him. Something's going on. I need to talk to this dude. So we did. That's the nudge.
Wow, I completely get it. And as soon as you told me that story, I thought, I wonder how many people out of 100, let's say, if they felt that nudge, I wonder how many people would follow it and how many people would talk themselves out of following it.
It's an important question, and there's 2 parts to that, maybe 3. The first part is deciding whether or not we want to train ourselves to be open to hear it. Now, if we don't take care of our bodies, like there was a period decades ago when I abused my body terribly, I was an addict and I had all kinds of struggles in that context. And so there probably were lots of physical nudges, complaints, noises in the body that I was ignoring. And it was covering and just flat didn't feel anymore. Our spirit or energetic essence can be the same. We can ignore or crush or turn down the volume so we don't hear those. It's like a radio receiver, and the old kind, you used to tune the dial to get right on the station, right? And to the side, there was a lot of static, and you had to get it right in the right place. But even if you did, if there was a lot of stuff going on in the room, you couldn't hear it. Or if the volume on the radio was really low, you couldn't hear it. So there's lots of reasons that we let life interfere. So part 1 is to choose to tune yourself to hear them. Part 2 is to then acknowledge that that's what they are, instead of stupid sound, whatever, and that kind of feeling where we just brush it off. And that's another choice. And the third choice is to act. So there's 3 intentional development opportunities. Do you choose to learn to hear it? Do you choose to acknowledge every time I choose to say that? That's just me. I choose. Every time I have that feeling, that means I do something. I don't argue with it. I don't talk about it. I don't think about it. I don't wonder, nothing. I know that's what it is. And then I choose to do something, either right that instant or whenever it makes sense to do it. And that's maybe send a note. It might be send a calendar link. It might be reach out to somebody. It might be sending them a voice text. It might be whatever. And so that's the 3 layers you have to develop. So it's not automatic, and you have to choose to do it. And the reason a person would do that is because you believe that there's both a purpose and a divine or powerful origin to those nudges, and a purpose for their coming, and a purpose for their coming to you.
Yeah, got it. Beautiful. Now, you just explained that very, very clearly. So you have obviously been connected to this for quite some time. Were you
I
always?
have, but you know what? I've never given that explanation before. It just occurred to me in this moment to have those layers exactly like that, and it came out just like that.
Well, super
So
clear.
go ahead with the question.
Yeah, thank you. Super clear. Loved it. Have you always known this, Kellan, or was there a point in your life where you sort of discovered this?
No, the discovery has to do with some really dramatic things that happened in my life in August of 2007. So just about 19 years ago. And that was the year I turned 52. So I'll be 71 this year. And in that year, I was just finishing up a 30-year career in a, corporate position in the U.S. and Canada. I had lots of C-suite positions, big shot, whatever. But I was living a prescribed life. Go get a job, get up in the company, do this, do that, make money and be important and all that crap. But I had ruined my own personal life. I was a drug addict. I'd been in and out of rehab. I failed at 3 relationships. I attempted suicide twice. I mean, my life was a wreck, a poster child for, looks great on the outside and behind the scenes, it's like, battlefield. So, and in August of 2007, I literally had a divine intervention, a nudge that was more like a 2x4, and a choice. And it's because I wasn't listening. Like, they get louder when they're important. The little ones to like help that dude maybe wouldn't have gotten louder, but the ones where your life's on the line, they get louder and louder. And mine ended up being a 2x4 to wake me up to different possibilities. And so at that point, I changed, and I can tell the story about it in a minute if you want, but after that, it changed the direction. I chose to change the direction. And one of the things was, I don't know how to do any of this or anything. I'd just been a C-suite corporate dude, right? And I didn't know how to do any of the things that I do or to teach or talk about or all the books. I've written like 24 books. I didn't know any of that. And so it began a journey of exploration, commitment, and discovery. And one of the things was this learning to hear, trust, believe, act on those intuition or nudges.
Amazing. So what did that original nudge tell you to do? What did it say to you? Or unless if that's not too personal.
No, I've written a book about that too,
Right.
called Tightrope of Depression, My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to Light, Love, and Life.
Nice.
Literally, I was coming to the conclusion of just 30 years in this business, and I was a big shot, so to speak, and I was single again for the 3rd time. I had 10 kids. 3 of them were grown up and married. 4 of them were living with me as a single dad, and the other 3 were living with one of, it's embarrassing to say, but one of the exes. And I was a $3,000 a week cocaine addict. I had just attempted suicide for the 2nd time 2 weeks before. My life was just a continual circle of disaster. So I came home from work on a Friday night, ready to go in August of 2007, and was ready to go out and party for the weekend. And before I went out, a couple of weird things had happened in the lead up to this, but I'll just tell the main thing. I was ready to go out to party, and suddenly I had this urge to turn on the TV. And that doesn't sound like anything, except I didn't watch TV. I'd bought the biggest, coolest stuff because I had 4 teenagers in the house, and we were the party house in the neighborhood because I was a crappy dad and whatever. So great big plasma, whatever. But anyway, I picked up the remote and realized I didn't know how to turn it on. So I had to ask one of my kids, and my 16-year-old daughter punched some buttons and threw the remote at me, dipstick. And it landed on a program I never heard of because I didn't watch TV, called Intervention, which is a reality TV show about families who stage interventions for busted loved ones. So I'm like, okay. And I watched about 10 minutes of this, and the protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. Well, I had a $3,000 a week addiction. So I watched about 10 minutes of this, and I said, yeah, I'm not watching this crap. And I turned it off and went and did some other stuff and got ready to go. I would have gone partying for the whole weekend. And all of a sudden, I had this urge. I couldn't resist it to turn the TV back on. So I did, and this time I knew how. And that program started over. And I didn't have a DVR, and it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. Okay. But it did. So I'm like, okay. So I watched the program, and it went badly. The guy yelled at his family and swore he didn't have a problem and stomped out of the intervention. Okay. But it freaked me out. So when it was over, I went, instead of going out to party, I went to bed. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere out of body, and I was in like a big theater, and I was watching scenes on the stage, and the scenes were all from my life, but they were specific ones, all focused on suffering. And I was raised in a 2-parent home, but it was really fanatic religious, and the discipline I got would be felony child abuse today. So a lot of that, so all the suffering that had been inflicted on me as a kid, up through and including the suffering I had inflicted on everybody as a drug addict, a lousy dad, a lousy partner, a pathological liar, and all the rest of it. And witnessing this panoply of suffering was more intense than I know how to describe, beyond expression, and it went on forever. And finally, after an eternity, there was a voice over my right shoulder that simply said 3 words. It is enough. I woke up and I sat up in bed, and I was freaked out for 3 reasons. 1, I was all twisted around and backwards in bed. And 2, the sheets were completely wring out wet, soaked. Like, I didn't know a body could lose that much liquid, but the only thing I can think of is the intensity of the experience caused that kind of stuff. The 3rd reason was that the sun was shining in the window, and the windows faced west. So I got up and realized, I looked at my clock, and it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for 18 hours. And I sat on the edge of the bed and realized that I'd been invited to change.
No
And
kidding.
I said, I have no idea what to do, who to talk to, how to do this. I had been completely isolated my whole life because, I'm a guy, and I was raised in that area. You don't talk about any of this crap. So I had no help, no idea what to do, but I knew one thing. I'm done. So I threw away $1,000 worth of substances I had laying around, because I always did. And I quit cold turkey that day. And that was the beginning of that was the first half of the intervention. The second half, Monday, I went back to work knowing that I had to get away from everything, start over, but one thing at a time. And I used to, in the work I used to get free stuff because I had a high-ranking position. And so the decisions I made affected other companies, sometimes to the tune of billions. So I used to get be nice to Kellan stuff, not bribes, but tickets and expensive bottles of booze and, perks, that kind of stuff. One of the things I got was a couple of tickets to see the Yo-Yo Ma concert. Now, if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. But in classical music, Yo-Yo Ma's like, ah. So I'm going. I was excited, but I didn't want to waste this other ticket, and I didn't have anybody to take. So I said to the group, the people that I manage, the groups, and I said, well, who likes classical music? And there was a woman in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I asked her, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no, because I gave away stuff all the time. She said, okay, here you go. And so it was about 3 weeks later. So in 3 weeks, we met at the venue. The concert was spectacular. And now I'm 3 weeks, stone cold sober, right? And halfway through the concert, I had this feeling come over me that I recognized as otherworldly from 3 weeks before. And a voice said to me, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you're flipping crazy. I said, I don't, I mean, she works in my group, so I know her, but I don't know her well enough to know if she has a relationship. Like, I don't think she's married, but I don't know if she has a relationship. Like, no. And besides that, I'm 3 weeks sober. I failed at this 3 times. This ain't happening. So later that night, we were backstage. They were really expensive tickets, like $1,000. Backstage passes, tickets to the reception, all that stuff. So we're backstage, and the feeling came back, and the voice said, comma, and you need to tell her tonight. And I said, yeah, there's a couple of problems to that. One, like I said, I don't know if she has a relationship. And two, she could like call the cops or HR or something for harassment. I said, no, this ain't happening. Get your wires crossed, whatever. But you don't win those arguments. So awkwardly and stupidly, I did. And it went about like you would have expected. Are you insane? And she left. But the good news was she didn't have a relationship. And the other piece of good news is she didn't call the cops or HR or whatever. Over the next 3 weeks or so after that, she had her own set of experiences. And so now about 6 weeks after the original thing, 3 weeks or so after the concert, she quit her position. She resigned her entire career. So did I. And we walked off into the sunset, period. And that has now been 19 years.
Oh, wow. What a beautiful story.
And she was literally the angel with a soul contract sent to help me learn how to be a person, how to tell the truth, how to have a friend, how to be a friend. And when I said she's an angel who walks on water, on top of that, she's a degree designer. She's a great cook, which I knew nothing about any of that crap. And she's been a business partner, and she is a unbelievable person. Oh, by the way, and her name is Joy. Like, you can't make any of this stuff up.
You could not make that up.
So what I take out of that is not that I'm interesting or special, because I'm not. What I take out of it is that is the length to which the invitations will go to help you decide and to live into who you are. Now, the invitations didn't do any of the work. We jumped off the cliff and built a parachute on the way down, which I do not recommend. But for us, it was the only way, given everything else that had happened. And so that was the nudge that was that loud, but I could have ignored that too, given who I was, where I was, and what I'd gone through.
Yeah. You were obviously ready to hear it at that point, whether or not you knew you were ready. It was obviously the right time.
Well, the key to it, and people ask, well, what did you do? And the answer is really simple. The first thing is you decide. Because when I said, I'm done, what I meant was, I have no idea how to do this, where to go, what to do, how it's going to work, what else I'm going to create. But I'm done. I'm going. I don't know how steep the road is, how much broken glass I got to crawl over. I don't know, but I don't care. I'm going. And that was the unwavering certainty at that moment.
Yeah, that sounds like, I love that, because that just reminds me of so many conversations I've had with people or that I've overheard, conversations I've heard where someone said, well, I had this feeling that, I should look into this, or that I had this feeling about doing this. And so, but it's not quite the right time because I've got a very, very busy week. So, I don't feel very well at the moment. So I can't really look into it. But I think, just I'll talk about not doing it with another 100 or so people, and then I'll think about maybe doing it. And then you get the thing you said about when you said I'm done, and you said and I have no idea what to do. I think sometimes people have this idea that they can only say yes to the nudge if they know how to do the thing.
I was not an author. I was not a coach. I had none of that intention or knowledge. I did not know that was where this was going. And I had no idea that, 19 years later, I would have 24 books and I'd have a worldwide coaching practice and all the things that I have now. I just knew what I have been doing is both an abject failure and a ridiculous misuse of the opportunity and calling and gifts that I have. So I'm done. Life and death, I'm done. And I'm going. And I stepping into the dark. It wasn't one step in the dark. It was full on, head first, all in.
After having had however long you were in bed, you were probably in bed for about 20 hours or something, undergoing a kind of spiritual purge.
Yeah. And I was, obviously exhausted and whatever, but I knew this is the thing. And that knowing doesn't come with instructions. You have to build it as you go. And it wasn't easy and hasn't been. And I had to do all the things you might imagine to get healthy, see some shrinks and go to rehab and do this and then think about. And then what happened is after that went on for a couple of years and I started experiencing real change and feeling like these things mattered, then what comes up for you, everybody, is this feeling is, the things that I've learned, I could really help somebody with this. And so there rises up at the same time this desire to help and a knowledge that what you have can be used to help in your own unique way that nobody else can do. And that's the truth of everyone's developmental story or the story of your becoming.
Yes. And then we're all kind of part of an ongoing ripple effect, and now you're here talking to me and my listeners are listening to you. So they're going to be hearing what you're saying, which might then help them tune in more to what is this nudge thing? Can I invest in becoming more able to hear that and feel that and acknowledge it and act on it, like you said? And they might have a conversation with somebody that then leads somewhere else. And that's part of what turns me on about this sort of awakening or responding thing for us. It's never just us, is it? It's us and then everybody else. So would you say a bit more about your practice now and who you're working with, what you're doing with people?
You bet. So we are built to love and serve. That's it. It is part of our divine nature, and you can define divine any way you want to. And so that's what I work on. My podcast is titled Your Ultimate Life, and it's about how to create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by using your own gifts and your life experience. Because the story of your becoming, for each of you listening, it's the most valuable thing you have. Everything else we learn how to do is like talking about that thing over there. But the things you have lived are unassailable truth because you have walked that road, whatever it was. And so helping people own that truth and then do something with it. So, for example, last week, I had something I call a book challenge, this dreambuildwriteit.com that's on the picture. It is a place where I teach for a week, an hour a day, like typical challenge format, how to think about your life story, how to organize it, how to create something out of it that you can turn into a book or product, a platform, so you can spread the message and be the help that you want to. And so then we also, again, my angel wife, after we did our first book with the New York publishing house, we didn't like that experience. So 11 or 12 years ago, she created a publishing company, and now we're a very solid mid-tier publishing company, and we have my books and lots of client books that we've published, and she's the best there is in terms of publicity and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things we do to help people identify create, package their own message, including, a book and whatever products they want to create from that, or speaking or whatever it is. And it's fun for me because I've done all that. I've done the speaking part. I've created products and services. I've created masterminds. I've done group coaching and private coaching. And so that's the core of the coaching, even though most people will come saying, I need help with my business. Are you a business coach? And the answer is, you bet your life. I can help you do that. And then we'll start right in the nitty gritty. What's the problem? Do you have a leads problem? Do you have a conversion problem? Do you not deliver well? What's the problem? And no matter where we start, it all comes back to one thing. Who are you being? Who is it that's showing up to do the business, to do the prospecting, to do the sales calls, to do the conversion, to do your market? Who are you being? Because when you fix that, the rest of the stuff's like just steps, activities. So that's what I do. I coach, I write, I'm a musician. I have almost 100 songs in commercial release. I have a concert next Wednesday that I do. It's the fourth one. I'm going to do one every month for the rest of the year. It's original music and telling stories and stuff like that. So that's what I do. That's my practice. It's who I am. It's who I help.
Amazing. You're a musician. Do you play an instrument? Do you sing?
Yeah, both. I started playing keys when I was 5, and I taught piano for 40 years. I started when I was 17 and quit when I was 57, about 13 years ago, because I didn't want to do it anymore. And I've taught everything from piano to jazz improv to orchestration to electronic music. I taught a class in electronic music at college. So all kinds of stuff. And so I've also been in a professional choir for 7 years that charted #1 on Billboard 3 times. So it's classical music kind of stuff. So although my own repertoire is jazz, and if I put myself in a box, I'm a classically trained jazz pianist.
Excellent. My favorite thing. The question that just strikes me, and we will have to wind up at some point. I'm having so much fun with you, though. I just don't want to. So something that strikes me is you were obviously a very talented man in many ways before you got into everything falling apart. Do you think, in your experience from working with clients and meeting people, do you feel there's a correlation between people who are highly talented and accomplished and people who then suffer from addiction?
That's an interesting question. Depression, people like Robin Williams, and they end up committing suicide and things like that. Maybe. I think for my case, it was suppression, because I was musically talented, gifted, etc., but I was not encouraged to use that at all, except in the community and church, because I grew up, in San Francisco Bay Area in the time when the hippie thing first started happening, and Haight-Ashbury and all that stuff. And so musicians were all drunks and lushes and bad things. So the idea that I wanted to be a musician was about as far from okay as you get. And so that's bad. And the only thing that's okay is to, go get a job and do the corporate thing. And I have had a recording studio for 40 years. I've done all kinds of people's, off and on, not all the time. When I was at the height of my corporate stuff, I couldn't run it, but so for many years, but it was frowned on. And so the juxtaposition between what I want to do and what it's allowed, that just wrecked me. Yeah. Completely wrecked everything. And so whether there's a direct correlation between addictions, sometimes the not good enough piece, the thing that I love to address that is Stephen Pressfield's, The War of Art and Turning Pro, and The Artist's Journey, those set of books that are all the same size and the same color, and they all have white covers. There's about 4 or 5 of them in that series. That's the best thing that addresses that sort of conflict about the risk of exposure. And everybody has that does any public-facing work, art, music, speaking, whatever. So that's why maybe there seems to be a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people listening to this are going to be thinking, This is a really busy guy. Does he actually have space for more clients? Do you have space for more clients?
Yes, I'm very picky, but I love talking to people. What this has done is here's what it really has done. When I was at my worst in August, the day before those things happened, I was the poster child for somebody that should have been left at the bottom of the canyon. 3 failed relationships, a wild drug addict, profligate spending, stupid behavior, a pathological liar, all that stuff. And even in that place, the divine saw fit to issue the invitation. And so, what this has taught me that I wasn't before is patience, forgiveness, love. And so I look people in the eye that I barely meet and tell them that I love them. And I mean it because what I see is another human who's on their journey, hearing and feeling the spiritual and physical tugging and the judgments of the world. And if there's a way I can help you, I want to. Maybe that's an actual paid coaching agreement. Maybe that's just the free stuff. Maybe it's buying a book or two that I've written, because all the books have come right out of the broken glass of my life. I wrote a book on forgiveness, on walking without fear. In 2018, I didn't even tell you this, I died. I contracted a fatal illness 11 years after the other one and had a near-death experience and had 3 conversations with God eternity about 8 years ago and wrote a couple books about that. And in August,
Did you argue with him as well?
No, that was a transcendent experience. I'm going in August to speak at the International Association of Near-Death Studies, their annual conference in Seattle, which I've done once before in Phoenix. And that's a big conference, 4 days, like 1,500 people, all these academics and all these people that study the weird fringe stuff. It's really cool. But they've asked me to come and speak. And so I get to do that, to talk about, I'm not just talking about what happened, but what it can mean, what one of these extraordinary experiences. But a person doesn't have to have that. I don't want your listeners to walk away and think, well, I don't have any of that crap, so it doesn't apply to me. Yeah, it does. You and I, we get exactly what you needed. I was so broken, I was out the door, gone. 2 weeks past my second failed suicide attempt, which should have killed me, by the way. And so you are precious. You matter. And so if somebody wants to talk, I'll take time.
Beautiful. And the thing you said about love, I almost said earlier in the conversation that I do get this sense from you that you're coming from a place of love in your work with other people. And I didn't say it because I thought maybe he doesn't want to describe it that way. But then you did describe it that way. So I was delighted to hear that, because that's what it feels like talking to you, Kellan, and listening to you. It feels like that's where you're coming from. And that's very touching and very warming as well.
That's all there is. I'm saying that to you, but also to your listeners. If we don't choose to develop love, we have nothing. That is the glue that holds everything together. Fear and hate and anger, it's divisive. It pushes things apart. All you have to do is look around in the world. Love and creativity and joy and compassion, that is attractive. It's like magnetic. So if you want to hold your life together, your relationships together, your talents and gifts, if you want to be a force, a beacon of light, a vessel of love, a conduit of power is a phrase that I use. That's all there is. And the man you see here now, 20 years ago, didn't even know how to frame that kind of language. So yes, I do it. Please, I'm glad you said it and called it. It is true. And sometimes I freak people out by telling them that I love them. And sometimes people melt down and weep.
Yeah. And for me, it makes me happy to see that and feel that, because that's as you say, it's the greatest gift. So this has been such a beautiful, honestly, I could talk to you for hours, Kellan. This has been such a beautiful conversation. Do you have something that you would like to say to anyone who's listening who is also doing their best to be sharing, helping, leading, guiding, supporting other people? Is there something you'd like to say to them?
Right here. yourultimatelifepodcast.com. My mission's to reach 300 million people. Okay, but it's not just with my message. I love having guests that are those people that you've described, those that have their own journey, their own message, their own path. And so the people that I interview on there, like you, are people that have a message to share, because together we can do it. And I am absolutely committed to reach that number. And we're well on the way. We have many, many millions. I think we're over 100 already, if you count the combined reach of all my shows. I have an LA talk radio show and a bunch of other things. And so I would invite you to go there, yourultimatelifepodcast.com, and there's a contact form. Get a hold of me. You want to share your song, your story, your message? Love to talk to you.
Amazing. Well, I will put that link in the show notes, as well as there's various other links on your screen, which people listening can't see unless they're highly, highly intuitive and can guess. But I will put all those in the show notes and people can find you. Kellan, we've talked about a lot today. Has there been for you a favorite part of our conversation?
You are my favorite part of this conversation. Your openness, your willingness, the joy you bring, the tenderness and compassion that are part of your being in essence. So my favorite part of the conversation is you.
Thank you so much. You'll have me in tears in a moment, Kellan. Saying things like, thank you so much. It was such a joy. Let's just remind people where to find you. Masteryourmonsters.com. And I think you said on there's actually like a free gift, an audio course that they can do.
There is a free gift. So you do have to surrender your email, but there's a 10-part audio course, and it's about Master Your Monsters is a funny name because as kids, we have monsters under the bed, in the closet, that sort of thing. And then we grow up and realize they're not there, but we still have monsters that eat our lunch from time to time. The it's not my fault monster, the I have no time monster, the procrastination monster, the, I'm afraid monster, all those kind of monsters that eat us. So this is a course for free about how to master those monsters.
Great. Well, everyone, I don't need that. I'm sure no one listening needs that. She said. I think we could all benefit from that. Thank you so much. Well, Kellan, it's been fantastic having you on, and thank you very much, everybody watching and listening, because even just by watching and listening, you are also practicing receiving the nudge, acknowledging the nudge, and acting on the nudge. So check out masteryourmonsters.com, check out truthandtranscendence.com. And also, you may or may not know this, but I'm also a coach. I help people to reconnect more fully with their calling and bring it more to life. So if you want to know more about that, check out some of the links in the show notes. So thank you again, Kellan, so much.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. And it's just great to meet you and to be acquainted with your listeners.